Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics. So, since the election, we've got the message loud and clear that Labour have lost a chunk of support, the Conservatives not really gained or lost on balance, and Reform UK have gained significantly. But with some detailed hot off the press polling out this weekend, what is the word on exactly where votes have been moving? What does the public really think? What does it all mean for the next election? Because actually, it's very good news for Labour. But first, for daily political commentary, please hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out. So Opinium have a new poll out, which may be the last one before Christmas. We'll see. Now, I'm not going to go over the headline results as such, though, they're up there if you're interested. What's of more interest is in how the votes break down by how people vote in the general election and what people think about what Labour are trying to achieve, because that's what's interesting. But just quickly, let me go over the reasons why the headline results aren't that interesting. First, although Opinion were in the top half of the pollsters at the general election, when you compare their final poll results with the actual election results, like most pollsters, they over-egged Labour and Reform UK vote, so clearly errors in there. So unless they've worked out what went wrong and fixed it, there's every possibility that there are errors in the headline results anyway, especially in terms of overestimating Reform's vote, because that has been a problem for pollsters for years. Second, voting intention half a year after a change of government doesn't really mean much for the next election. See, look at the last time there was a change of government. 6 months later, Labour shot up in the polls. They'd lost the election, mostly at the expense of the Lib Dems. They also went down. They copped a lot of flack from their voters for the policies being enacted. But although the Lib Dem vote share carried on going down, Labour's did the same. The Conservatives didn't move anywhere. In the whole 5 years, their vote share was the same in 2015 as in 2010, but they won a majority because everyone else has crashed, right? So in a first past the post system, like if you're looking ahead towards the next general election, when a lot is going to happen, what's of more interest is movement of voters. And Opinion have some interesting details under the bonnet. But before I look at that, so let's consider our starting point. The default position is Labour won a massive majority. The Reform UK vote was too uniform across the country, meaning that the third largest haul of votes only won them 5 seats. So they were in third place in terms of vote share, but joint 6th in terms of seats won. We also know that elderly people are more likely to die between elections, and so parties who rely on older voters are going to suffer more in natural wastage, so to speak. So both the Conservatives and Reform UK are likely to lose a chunk of votes to old age. Mind you, Reform are at least appealing to some younger groups, unlike the Conservatives, so this is way more serious for the Tories. And although Labour have lost a chunk of support, like you consider what it's been the result of, first, just bad press. But when Labour starts showing the tangible benefits of those policies, they will have something to counter that bad press with. More on that towards the end of the video. Second, some questionable policies, which actually, if you think about it, almost exclusively affect pensioners. Now, there are also some policies which benefit some pensioners. Remember, they've massively increased the number of pensioners on pension credit, which is worth thousands, to counter that. And most of the pensioners negatively affected don't vote Labour anyway. And most of the rest, you start getting those NHS waiting lists down and all of a sudden Labour look a lot more attractive. So, but even if some pensioners are permanently lost to Labour as a result of early policies, it's a much smaller proportion of their vote than for either Reform or the Conservatives, who are their main challengers in most seats. So that's the starting position. So what about these poll results? Well, talking of age groups first, it shows that Labour have been losing most support, predictably, amongst older voters, and not really so much with younger ones. Again, largely, I suppose, as a result of the fact that the unpopular policies tended to almost exclusively affect pensioners or people of pension age, and also bad press in the media. If it's mostly older people reading legacy media, that can explain that too. Remember, a lot of Labour's biggest policies are actually of benefit to younger voters, whether it be on housing, energy, workers' rights, pay. These are areas where younger people will see the benefits. So Labour can be confident of winning support amongst these groups over the next few years. What particularly interested me is the movement between parties. So 11% of the Conservative vote seems to have gone to Reform. Now consider Reform already took a lot of votes off the Conservatives for the general election. So this is extra. These are people who voted for the Conservatives at this election. Even with the rise of Reform UK, they still said, no, we're going to vote for the Conservatives. And 11% of them has gone, all right, we'll vote for Reform now. And 9% have gone to Labour. Now, that sounds like they're taking more votes from the Conservatives than Labour. But of course, Labour won a lot more votes than the Conservatives, suggesting that Reform are actually attracting more actual votes from Labour than the Conservatives, right? So they are harvesting more votes from Labour. But you would expect that because they harvested so many from the Conservatives at the election as well. But it is still interesting that they are able to attract such a high proportion of Conservative votes even since the election. And although Labour are losing more to them now, I'd point out a few things to consider, like a couple of things straight away. First, Labour are in government, which means they're in a position to enact policies whose results appeal to those voters. For example, record deportations, the boost to affordable housing, better workers' rights and incomes. They're all going to appeal to Reform supporters of working age. Whereas the Tories can't do anything now to win those voters back. They can try and sound more credible than Reform UK. But that's all they can do, make shinier promises. And they don't really seem to have a plan for that. Second thing to consider is that a right-wing split of votes is always sort of good for Labour with a first-past-the-post system, which I'm hoping goes, but is going to be in place for the next election. There is a danger that Reform take Conservative votes from areas which don't really impact results, and then Labour ones from ones where they do. You can't tell that from this polling. So Labour still need to be careful, but the bottom line is that Labour begin with a stupidly high majority. The Tories have their worst result in the history of British parliamentary democracy. And just in general, I would point out what I did last week on the subject of polling. Labour's popularity has taken a knock from not only front-loading the costs, but before the benefits can be seen, but also because a hostile media is briefing against them at every opportunity. Now, until people actually feel the benefits, what have they got to judge the government on? Only what they see in the news. Because what they feel is no better than under the Tories right now. In 2 or 3 years' time, that will change. NHS waiting lists will be noticeably down. Affordable housing should be noticeably up. People should feel the benefits of better pay and rights in the workplace, those of working age. But that is Labour's most important source of support. It's hard to imagine that Labour will not be in a much better place in 2027 than they are now. Yet even the poll results now indicate a Labour majority government. They would lose seats, yes, absolutely, but they would still have a majority, and a majority strong enough to actually get things done. It is, of course, possible that the polling gets a bit worse for them next year. If their comms don't improve, they are still going to be flailing against negative news stories, confected or otherwise, until their policies start improving things, which I doubt is going to happen in a big way until like 2026 at least, might be 2027. But they're unlikely to be announcing many more policies that prove a problem. They've front-loaded that as well. You know, everything bad they seem to have done. Let's do it quickly now. Let's get it all out of the way, rip the sticking plaster off so that, you know, come the election, it's all in the rearview mirror, right? And in terms of Keir Starmer's 6 milestones announced this month, the polling has asked about those usefully. We can see which ones Labour should absolutely focus on. In terms of those with the strongest support, it was putting more money into the pockets of working people, getting treatment wait downs for the NHS, and it looks like not many are as bothered about the home building programme. But like I said, that's aimed mostly at young people. But what does that mean? If they don't quite hit those targets, are the public going to be pissed off? No. The boost to community policing was also popular. So if Labour deliver on those, then this polling strongly suggests that Labour will absolutely get a lot of support for it. Interestingly, and this is a majority do not believe Labour will achieve these targets. So they're very positive about at least 3 of those milestones, but there is no majority believes they will achieve any of them. Which sounds bad, but I'm going to say is actually good news, because if Labour actually achieve what people don't think they can or will, that just means the potential for a polling boost in a few times is all the greater. Oh, I didn't think they'd do it. They've done it. Oh, good show, good show. I'll vote for them now. So there's lots to be optimistic about here. Labour's success was always centred on the ability to deliver anyway, because the media never cover for their failures. In fact, they try to cover their successes in shit. But it shows that if Labour do what they're aiming to do, then it has overwhelming public support. And if you deliver what the public overwhelmingly support, you're not going to be in trouble at the next general election. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. If you've enjoyed the video, please click the like button and subscribe for further content. If you'd like to support the channel further, you can click the join button for memberships. Thanks for listening. And until next time, I'll see you later.